How did I go from being on the back foot to being ahead of the other RS600 and a load of other boats in race 1 at the Tiger Trophy? I'm hoping in this video we can have a little look at the data, especially thanks to the fact that SailJuice have trackers on all of the boats. And what I learned very recently is not only can you just see that tracking data, it also lets you compare data between boats, including things like distance sailed, VMG, and so on. So I think it'll be pretty interesting to have a look at this and understand what I did differently and how I could then apply that to other situations at other races. Now, if you're not familiar, the Tiger Trophy is an event that happens every year at Rutland Sailing Club as part of the Selden SailJuice Winter Series. I think the series is great for being able to learn some new skills, sail with sailors of all abilities, but the key thing is fleet management. You're not just sailing against your class, you're sailing against boats that are faster, slower, and in the case of the Tiger Trophy, the 600 was actually one of the slower boats in the fast fleet. So you really have to think about dirty air and keeping a clean lane. And these skills, while it might be difficult and not super, comparable to fleet racing, they definitely come in handy. You really see the impacts of dirty air, and you really makes you think about, okay, my boat has different characteristics that these boats don't have maybe or do have. How can I use that to my advantage, or how can I sort of make the disadvantage be less of a consequence? Now, let's talk about what's happening right now. So we're at Rutland Sailing Club. Rutland's sort of this horseshoe shape, you could say, with this peninsula down the middle, and we had a southwesterly breeze. Now, we were positioned sort of just to the south bit of that peninsula, and as you can see, there are some trees on that peninsula, but not over the entire thing, just right on the edge. Now, this plays a major factor into some of the gains you could make. Now, the other thing to factor in as well is we had to go for a gate each lap, but the key thing that's different to usual events is the gate was separate to the start line. So you had the start line on the left side of the committee boat, but the gate was on the other side. Now, and the gate was also shorter than the start line. So this kind of forced everyone together to get through the gate, but it also put you naturally on the right-hand side of the course compared to the start line, which was more, in the middle of the course. So with all of that in mind, you can use that to play into your advantages. So here I've got the tracking up for race number 1 from the Selden SailJuice series. Now, I didn't realise, but you could go to TAC Tracker and you can view all of the SailJuice events. I found going to the tracking link on the official website only showed you the most recent event. This allows you to see all of the previous ones as well, and it also gives you access to the VMG meter and the leg analysis, which is the thing I didn't realise existed, but it's very, very nice. Now, let's have a little look at understanding what Rutland looks like. So Rutland's this big horseshoe that you can see here. If I just go backwards there, if we zoom in, you can see we've got our 4 marks, and we're kind of awkwardly wrapping around this peninsula, and you'll see as we go upwind, you'll see lots of boats are hugging right up to the peninsula here, and some are going a little bit more out to the left-hand side of the course. In this case, it looks right because it's upside down. To get to the windward mark. Now, as you can see, I'm on the back foot to Jamie for quite most of the race, to be honest, until I sort of clock what's going on with the wind. As you can see here, I'm just sort of behind Jamie, but you'll notice on this first lap here, as we go on to the next beat, you'll notice that even though I'm behind Jamie, I've sort of closed the distance on him a little bit there, and made a bit of a gain, and we're kind of wondering, what is that gain, you may be wondering. Now, we can see that at the peninsula here that the wind is effectively bending around it, which some could say is similar to what happens at Lake Garda with the cliffs. The wind is sort of going like this direction, and it's sort of bending around the peninsula, which means as you're sailing towards it, you're sort of getting a lift, and just getting lifted and lifted as you get closer to the peninsula. So you can actually see that I, on this windward leg, actually sailed less distance than Jamie, and it also took me quite a lot less time than Jamie too, about 30 seconds, which means that my overall VMG was better than his. Now, obviously, he was ahead of me, so all this has done is close the gap and mean that when we rounded the mark here, and if I zoom in, you can see that we're basically neck and neck with each other, whereas at the beginning of the last one, if we go back over to there, Jamie has hang on, let's just zoom in. You can see Jamie is quite comfortably ahead of me as we're going up to the gate. So very, very interesting to sort of see this happen with the tracker without having to actually go and sort of guess from just video. Now the video is also very helpful. We are going to have a look at the video too, but yeah, it's very interesting to sort of see this. And we've also got the numbers as well on the compass. So you'll see here, and if I just turn off, well, I can just zoom in a little bit. You can see my bearing there is 217. As I get closer, that's now 210. And I think it gets as low as 208. So I've basically gone up 10 degrees from the gate. And you can see that lift happening a little bit there too. Whereas Jamie has also been knocked, it looks like. If we go back, we'll see that Jamie has been knocked a little bit there too. Now, the other thing to factor in, which again you could say is a bit of a Garda effect, is the wind was definitely stronger on the right-hand side of the course, which was also where this lift was. But some of that is, again, kind of what happens at Lake Garda, where all the wind that would be going around this, over this peninsula, because there's a big patch of trees on the corner here, it's all sort of being funneled around the trees, and as a result, it's really strong as you're coming up towards the trees, which is why if you ever look at the video now, you'll see that I get pretty close to the trees before I decide to tack, but there's still quite a lot of pressure there, even though you would normally suspect it to be quite light behind the trees, but because it's bending around the trees, you don't get that dead spot in quite the same way. Pretty neat, huh? So let's skip along towards the end. So I'm catching up to Jamie. I end up following him downwind because downwind it's definitely more pressure on the left-hand side than the right. Anyway, we start the last leg of the race. Now, as you can see, Jamie tacks off immediately. I can understand why he would do this. There was a lot of dirty air coming off of boats who were just going straight up towards the gate. And I decided, because I didn't have as much dirt as Jamie, that it was definitely going to pay. As you can see, he rounded with loads of boats, whereas I rounded with a nice clean gap. So I decided to keep going. Now, he's tacked for the gate. I've overshot it a little bit and had to duck, which is a bit annoying, but not the end of the world. You can see I'm right on Jamie's tail here. And now we are entering onto leg 9, which is the beat. Now, I've tacked off straight away. After I've now clocked on to the fact that there's this wind bend happening around the peninsula, it's definitely worth me being able to sort of take advantage of that. Now, Jamie actually tacks off quite early on because he thinks he gets headed a little bit. And to be fair, some of that would be the dirty air he was getting from other boats, which is something else you have to factor in, is dirty air will definitely take its course. And he tacks back. But I think this is where the being super close to the shore really makes the difference. Now, at Lake Garda, people often say you want to be able to get to that right-hand side as quickly as possible to get over to the cliffs where the wind bends. And I'd say the same was happening with this peninsula. You could still go towards the right-hand side, but you definitely seem to get the most gain by basically tacking straight away. As you can see here, Jamie is a little bit more to the left than me, but he's not getting quite the same gain and actually tacks off on what looks like an alright lift, but maybe sailing away from the pressure now, whereas I've sailed right up close and I didn't feel like, at the moment, water levels are low, thought I might have run aground going any closer. A few boats did. Brave. I didn't really want to take that risk. If I had gone a little bit further, I could have potentially made the ley line in one, but as you can see here in the video, not super deep, and I also didn't want to get too close to the trees and then do get stuck in a dead zone. Now you'll see Jamie goes off to the left-hand side, which we've already sort of clocked is maybe not favoured, both from the start, where it just clearly didn't work out very well, even if you had clear air, but also from just from these previous laps, going up to that peninsula is clearly an advantage. Now, something I mentioned at the start is that we had to go for a gate that was to the side of the start line. Now, if we look at the start line, right, the start line is very much in the middle of the course, whereas the gate is very much guiding you over to that peninsula where the wind bend is. So it sort of encourages you to go right. Going left effectively is just extra distance. And as you can see, I sailed, a good 84 meters. I think that is less than Jamie. But speed-wise, I was only a little bit quicker than him. So the combination of slightly more speed, thanks to the stronger winds, but the distance will show that the lift was definitely the thing paying here over the wind speed. And so as you can see here, I had to do a double tack because I wasn't able to make it. So here's that double tack. I just tried to make it nice and quick, duck this 29er, and then got my tack in, sorted. Now I'm going around that mark. This is where Jamie's able to make a gain on me. He is super quick on the reaches. I definitely got a little bit carried away chasing this musto. I don't want to get stuck in their dirt, but I knew they were going to go high to pull the kite up. This is something I actually discussed with a few of the sailors sailing symmetric boats, such as Ospreys. What do? Do you go super low? Do you go high to defend your air? None of us could really come to a conclusion because there was just boats everywhere. But it definitely helped on those later laps. Now, Jamie goes for his typical approach of going super low. And as you can see here, he goes really low compared to me, and he's able to take a load of speed, whereas I'm sort of now having to bear away loads, whereas he's able to take a bit of height as we're getting closer to mark number 2. Now, as we get up to mark number 2, as you can see here, he's right on my transom. I actually have to say to him, he does not have overlap and he is not allowed mark room. So he sort of last minute bails and goes around the outside of me. Now, because we've just been hit by a big gust, I'm very eager to jibe off and take that pressure down the left-hand side of the run, especially because in a 600, once you get hit in that pressure, you can then soak in it and basically sort of point at the mark. Whereas Jamie has taken the approach of doing something different to the leader by going right. But as you can see, I've taken that gust, whereas he sort of sailed out the other side of it, and I've made a huge gain on him, even though he didn't jibe very much, hugely later than me. As you can see here from the tracker, he didn't jibe much past the mark, a good few boat lengths, but he didn't bang the right-hand side and then go to the ley line. He jibed quite early on, but you can see I'm soaking a lot lower than he is because I'm in that pressure. And then I decided to jibe to make the mark, start heading over to the other side. And as you can see, the course was definitely biased for going down the left-hand side. As you can see, we can almost make the mark in one. And then I have to do a quick jibe to get myself actually around the mark. But you can see Jamie has gone a lot higher than I have, and Jamie is a lighter 600 sailor. He sails with the wide racks, and he normally sails super low downwind, a technique that no one else really has in the fleet, but it works really well for him. Anytime anyone else tries it, the boat speed is just not very good. Maybe some of that's down to the weight of having less weight in the boat, but based on chatting to him, I don't think there is really that much weight difference because he has heavier racks, he has a 3 kilo weight in the boat, he's between the 70 to 75 kilo range, and I'm in the 80 to 85 to 90 kilo range, so there's a maybe, once you add it all up, maybe 3 or 4 kilos difference between us, boat setup that is, and will that make that much of a difference? I don't know, it's hard to tell, but anyway, we're now onto that bottom leg. I've got no traffic. The fleet's spread out now. I've actually got past some of the slower boats like the Ospreys, and I've caught up to some of the 5.0s. Now it's just a case of keeping Jamie at bay. I just take it really nice and gentle on that bottom reach, which is still quite broad, all things considered. And then up to the finish line, I decide to tack off to get out of dirty air, and then make my way all the way to the finish, which we can see here. I'm getting through the finish line, where I just had to do a quick tack, and I'm through. And I ended up beating Jamie by, I think, a total of 60-osh seconds over the whole race. And all of that came down to that last lap, which is very, very interesting because, well, I didn't think I was going to catch him based on what we saw earlier, right? If we go back to lap, I think it was, we only did 3 laps. If we go back to the start, right, he was clearly ahead of me, and I'd have to do something dramatically, out of the ordinary to catch him. But this is where having a compass on the boat was helpful, because even though I didn't really feel like I was getting lifted tons, I could see that I was being lifted thanks to the compass. I always find it difficult in the 600 when you're super out on the rack, and you haven't really, I find on a hiking boat it's a bit easier to sort of see where the front of the boat's pointing in relation to where you're going. I find that much harder on a trapeze boat. But being able to use the compass to say, okay, I'm lifted 10 degrees, that's quite dramatic. And as long as I'm wiring, then the lift is probably pretty worthwhile. Saying that, it's definitely worth noting that at the Graffen Grand Prix, which was the following week, Jamie had the upper hand on me. it definitely seemed like the pressure was definitely the favoured sort of tactic over the lifts. I was playing the lifts, which I did make a few gains on. I was able to get ahead of Jamie, but he was chasing the pressure, and it seemed like that paid off that time. If you're interested, I do have video footage from race 1 of the Grafton Grand Prix where Jamie and I were on each other's tail for most of the race. So if you're curious for another analysis with the tracking, let me know. I'm curious to have a look at that too. But yeah, I thought this was quite an interesting video on how using the tracker can really help put into perspective the gains you can make. I'm using this to help me make some gains downwind, as I always struggle to sort of gauge if I'm in the correct lift or sort of the correct jibe, you could say, downwind. Am I going the shortest course or not? I find it much easier upwind, but downwind I find it really difficult to gauge. So I'm hoping I can use some of this tracking to sort of help me understand what I did wrong at the Grafton Grand Prix, where I got the downwind completely wrong and Jamie made some huge gains. But here at the Tiger, that Garda effect, you could say, maybe we want to call it that, maybe you don't, where instead of cliffs we've got some trees, was able to, you're able to make some gains. The thing is, people clocked onto that going into race 2, and it became a lot harder. Everyone was banging the right hand side. Everyone was kind of avoiding it at first because it felt like, oh, there's trees over there, don't want to go near the trees. But actually the trees were helping you, and so it became harder to make those gains because other people were making the gains as well. It's just about keeping out of the dirt of people, especially some of the big boats. Like there was an SB20, never seen one before, but man, the spinnaker on that thing cuts a hole in the air. You do not want to end up underneath that thing because you just come to a stop. To be fair, the K6 was just as bad too. At the pursuit race, I remember going around like the second mark, they started just behind us because they're a bit faster, and I just was like on the downwind thinking, oh, I've just come to a complete stop, turning around to see they've pulled their kite up, but they were like miles away, like not very close at all. But yeah, that was enough to really take the wind out of the sails and allow Jamie to catch me back up. So you've got to be careful with the dirty air. It's crazy, especially in the light wind. You notice the impact big time. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this video. It's a bit different to my usual videos, but I thought it was quite a good way of analysing the data, having a look at what you could use at different clubs. I guess the main takeaway here is obviously the wind bends. Some clubs have islands, some clubs have landmarks or parts of the landscape that might impact how the wind goes. It might bend around the corner. So yeah, experiment with that. Let me know if there's anywhere else that you found has these wind effects like Garda and like Rutland. I'm curious to hear where you're sailing and what kind of effects you see. Anyway, happy sailing, and hopefully I'll see you all at an event soon.